Scandal. The General Counsel of the Judiciary bent the law to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Judge Peinado. Let's begin. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Precautionary Measures. And this issue we're going to address today is a very serious matter that has occurred in the last few hours. Which, of course, with the Supreme Court's ruling on the case, Coldo has been pushed into the background, but that doesn't make it any less serious. And that doesn't mean we're not going to devote a video to this story because we have legal information, relevant information, and of course it makes them look very bad. To the General Counsel of the Judiciary, to the CGPJ presided over by Isabel Perello, pay close attention because what we're being told is that Isabel Perello's CGPJ twisted the organic law of the judiciary to start disciplinary proceedings against Judge Peinado. You heard that right? We have all the information, all the legal arguments about this very serious action by the CGPJ, and of course we are going to share it on screen. But first, let me remind you that you need to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel if you haven't already, as we're already on our way to 136,000 subscribers. The goal, as you know, is to reach 150,000 in the short term. Come on, let's get to it, and we already have this information and this photo on the screen. An important photo. You'll understand why later as well, but let's explain who the people in this photo are. Let's zoom in, let's put it here. On the right is Margarita Robles wearing red. On the left is Felix Bolaños, and next to Felix Bolaños, dressed in black, we have Isabel Perello, the President of the Supreme Court and the Judiciary, and in white, the President of the Congress of Deputies, Francina Armengol. So, pay close attention. The General Counsel of the Judiciary, presided over by Isabel Perello, forced the application of the organic law of the judiciary to initiate disciplinary proceedings against the head of the Court of Instruction number 41 of Madrid, Juan Carlos Peinado. All of this happened after the judge referred in his order to open the oral trial against Begoña Gómez to the possible collaboration of her police escort in helping her with a potential escape. You already know that in that order, Judge Peinado said that at a certain point, responding to an argument, the defense of Begoña Gómez, which is led by Antonio Camacho, argued that it was not necessary to impose precautionary measures to prevent her escape because she has a police escort, and of course the police would not allow Begoña Gómez to escape. And of course Judge Peinado refuted this in his order to open the oral trial and said, well, precisely, the police could receive orders, or on their own, those police escorts could help Begoña Gómez. Intentionally or not, they might help her escape, right? Since they're escorts, if she has to go to the airport, they'll take her there. And that could make it possible for Begoña Gómez to escape. That's what Judge Peinado said in his order, and it caused quite a stir. This Monday, the CGPJ decided to send Judge Peinado's order to the disciplinary action promoter, following the complaint from the Minister of the Interior, Fernando Grande Marlaska, after Peinado's reasoning about the police escort to justify imposing precautionary measures on Begoña Gómez. The vote in the CGPJ ended with 4 votes in favor and 4 against, which left the final decision in the hands of the casting vote of the President of the Supreme Court and the CGPJ Jota, who is Isabel Perello, who had already expressed her support for sending the order to the disciplinary action promoter to study whether Peinado may have committed any disciplinary offense that would warrant a sanction. It is important to make clear that what has been agreed is to forward Judge Peinado's order, especially the part that refers to the police escort of Begoña Gómez. That's the only thing that matters, that needs to be investigated. And the disciplinary action promoter is the one who now has to evaluate whether to open that sanctioning process or not. But for now, it has already been submitted, so the first step has been taken. The procedure has begun to start sanctioning Judge Peinado. Well, legal sources we have consulted at Medidas Cautelares and Libertad Digital emphasize that what the CGPJ has done is outrageous, since it stretched the legal classification under the organic law of the judiciary to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Peinado. The council, presided over by Isabel Perello, approved the referral of the judge's order to the official in charge of disciplinary action, invoking Article 418.5 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary. This provision considers as a serious offense, open quotes, the excess or abuse of authority or serious lack of respect towards citizens, institutions, clerks, doctors, forensic experts, or other personnel serving the administration of justice, members of the public prosecutor's office, lawyers and attorneys, labor relations graduates, and officers of the judicial police. However, they point out to us that the case law regarding this provision, specifically Article 418.5 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary, exempts from a hypothetical sanction if the alleged excess occurred within the framework of their judicial actions, as is the case with Peinado. Let me translate. If Judge Peinado has carried out that alleged abuse, that verbal excess in his statements regarding the police escort of Begoña Gomez, but he has done so as part of an argument to justify the need to impose interim measures, so Judge Peinado cannot be sanctioned for this matter. Plain and simple. You cannot refer to Article 418.5 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Peinado, because case law indicates that in this situation, if such a statement has been made as a response to a legal argument, which is the case here, it is not applicable. This provision does not apply, which is the one chosen by the CGPJ of Isabel Perello to forward Peinado's order and initiate this disciplinary procedure. In any case, they tell us, Peinado's statement about Begoña Gomez's bodyguards could fit under Article 418.6 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary, which considers it a serious offense, quote, the use in judicial rulings of unnecessary or inappropriate expressions, extravagant or clearly offensive or disrespectful from the point of view of legal reasoning. Could this fit? Yes, but what about now? This is what's important, so that this hypothetical sanction against the judge could be studied. Under this provision, it is essential to have the prior certified record or communication sent by the higher court regarding the person who issued the decision, with the higher court handling the case on appeal. To put it simply, this means that the Provincial Court of Madrid would have to send Peinado's decision to the CGPJ after ruling on an appeal against that decision. And would the Provincial Court of Madrid consider whether the investigating judge's statement about Begoña Gomez's security detail is a matter that could lead to possible sanctions? Obviously, this requirement has not been met, so Article 418.6 cannot be applied either. This has been clear to them at the General Council of the Judiciary. And that's why they haven't applied this one, but they've tried to apply Article 418.5, which doesn't fit either. And that's the seriousness of what has happened. The same sources consulted point out that Isabel Perello decided to send Judge Peinado's order to the disciplinary action promoter after receiving very strong pressure from Pedro Sanchez's government. Everything ends up with Pedro Sanchez. These pressures on Perello would have materialized through the Ministers of Interior, Fernando Grande Marlaska, Justice, Felix Bolaños, and, pay attention, Defense, Margarita Robles. Precisely, Margarita Robles is a close friend of Perello. They tell us what has happened is very serious, and it's hard to accept that Perello and the left-wing members who voted in favor of referring Peinado's order to the disciplinary action promoter were unaware of the case law regarding Article 418.5 of the Organic Law of the Judiciary. And that's all we can say. Let everyone draw their own conclusions. But of course, it's a very serious action on the part of the CGPJ, which has given in to pressures that cannot be accepted either from Pedro Sanchez's government. We recall that Peinado sent Begoña Gomez to trial this Saturday for alleged crimes of business corruption, influence peddling, embezzlement, and misappropriation. In addition, he imposed precautionary measures on her, such as the withdrawal of her passports because she may have several, a ban on leaving the country, and bi-weekly court appearances to sign in. This Wednesday, Begoña Gomez is summoned at 6 p.m. by Peinado to hand over her passports if she has more than one. It should be noted that against this decision by Perello and the left-wing members of the CGPJ, there was a dissenting opinion from the conservative members. The 4 conservative members stated in this dissenting vote that the judge had simply explained the reasons that led him to consider withdrawing the passport from the wife of the Prime Minister and that this decision can be appealed. That decision, the dissenting vote stated verbatim, is strictly jurisdictional and can only be reviewed through the ordinary appeals process available against it. The natural venue where a possible absence, insufficiency, or error in the reasoning can be assessed. This is precisely in line with what we have just explained. For this reason, these conservative members of the CGPJ argued that it is not the CGPJ that should decide on this matter, but rather, as I mentioned, it is up to the provincial court to make a decision regarding Peinado's actions. And I quote, "Any action by the CGPJ," these members said on this matter, "would mean illegitimately interfering in the powers that belong solely to the Provincial Court of Madrid in the appeals process, affecting the constitutional principles of exclusivity of jurisdiction and judicial independence." This is what the conservative members of the CGPJ said in their dissenting opinion. And this is the extremely serious information that we reported in precautionary measures. The General Council of the Judiciary, the CGPJ, presided over by Isabel Perello, forced the organic law of the judiciary to initiate disciplinary proceedings against Judge Peinado. All of this happened after Peinado, in his order to open the oral trial in which he sent Begoña Gomez to trial, stated that Begoña Gomez's police escort could, at a given moment, help Pedro Sanchez's wife, either consciously or unconsciously, to escape. For this reason, the CGPJ, by forcing the classification of the organic law of the judiciary, decided this Monday, with the casting vote of the President Isabel Perello, to refer that part of Peinado's order to the disciplinary action promoter with the aim of initiating disciplinary proceedings. They tell us that what has happened is extremely serious and that it is a complete scandal. And that's how the situation stands. It should be remembered, as I have also mentioned in the report, that all of this was triggered by the unacceptable pressures from Pedro Sanchez's government. Through the Minister of the Interior, Fernando Grande Marlaska, the Minister of Justice, Felix Bolaños, and the Minister of Defense, Margarita Robles, who is a close friend of Perello, a real scandal within the judiciary. Any updates on this matter, I will of course share them here on Medidas Cautelares. That's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me your comments, your opinions, give it a like, share the video with whoever you want, and you already know that you can become a member of Medidas Cautelares to support this great community, this great channel. You can become a chosen member, like the chosen ones, for less than €3 a month, or you can become a supreme member, like the supreme ones, for less than €7 a month. You can also make contributions via Bizum at 627-556370. Share it with your friends, and I'll see you in the next video. The most important thing, as I always say, is that this information reaches everyone, because information is power. See you soon.